Well, hello there. Hey, everybody. My name is Ciaran. I'm the host of the Metal Detecting Show podcast. Normally, I would go, I've been metal detecting for the last 30 years, and I have been. This is an unusual episode. It's the last episode of the Metal Detecting Show podcast as we know it. I let that sink in for a little bit. So the Metal Detecting Show podcast, RIP, the 27th of March, 2020 to June 14th, 2023. So I've been almost doing the podcast now for 3 years, and it's time to wrap it up, or at least wrap it up in its current form. Why am I wrapping it up? I know you're going to ask that. Well, I suppose the why is related to the why I got into it in the first place. The reason I got into the podcast in the first place was obviously I love metal detecting and I've been doing it for years. The landscape for metal detecting content out there at the time of the podcast going live back in March was just full of podcasts, 3 hour long podcasts of people trying to replicate what Joe Rogan is doing with long form content. And when you actually looked at the content that was being presented, actual content that could be used or help people learn the hobby, you could break it down to, in some episodes, 30 seconds, the answer of one question or whatnot. So my idea for the podcast was in opposition to that long form content. And that's why I produced a podcast that was very short and succinct and tried to answer one question per episode. And that format proved fairly successful. Another reason I got into it was I wanted to learn how to make a podcast. And then afterwards I wanted to get into learning how to make the videos for the podcast. So it was a learning curve. I also thought it would help me professionally as part of my role as presenting to people every day. And it has done that. It has helped me develop those skills in presenting. Another reason to get into the podcast, I suppose, was COVID-19. When COVID-19 kicked off, I think it kicked off 3 weeks before the first episode of the podcast. I was spending 3 hours a day commuting to work, and we had just switched to work from home. And in that switch, I felt, okay, I'm after being gifted 3 hours a day. What am I going to do with those 3 hours a day? Now it's time to do the podcast. I had thought of the idea of doing the podcast almost 2, 3 years before that, but I never plucked up the courage to do it. I had registered a domain, started gathering equipment, looking at the concepts 2, 3 years beforehand. So it wasn't just a new idea, it was just the opportunity was presented and I took that opportunity. And here we are, nearly 3.5 years later. Why am I deciding to wrap it up now? Which almost seems mid season. I was in the middle of doing the feature series and looking at other ideas for the podcast. Well, I suppose in the last 6 months, I felt the quality wasn't there. Now, maybe that's just my own expectations comparing to other metal detecting podcasts' quality. I just felt my quality wasn't there. And I felt that it was a bit of a lie to myself to keep pushing the podcast out based on that lack of quality there. And I'm not talking about the video quality or audio quality, that's quite good, or I think it's quite good. I'm talking about the content quality. If you look through the podcast, you'll see that in the last 6 months, I've probably repeated quite a number of topics. Now, I have gone deeper into them, but has been a certain level of repetition. And because of that, I felt the quality hasn't been there. Another side of it is I work over the weekends. So my weekend is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And I found that I was spending a significant portion of my downtime doing the podcast. So I would do a few hours Monday, a few hours Tuesday, and a few hours Wednesday just to get up a 15, 20 minute podcast that, in my view, the quality wasn't there. I could keep going. And to be honest, I felt this about 6 months ago, and I said I would just keep going. I would start putting the videos up on YouTube as requested, and that's been going fine. And however, like I said, the quality wasn't there, and I felt I was starting to repeat myself, and that's why I've decided to quit while I'm ahead. And believe me, I am quitting while I'm ahead We have over 2,000 listeners to every episode, which is significant if you think of the niche of metal detecting, all without any real push in social media. I'm terrible at social media. um, so over 2,000 listens, or reach as they call it, per episode. So the quality is not there. Taking a lot of time from my personal time. It's actually taken away time for me to get out metal detecting. I've actually metal detected less this year than I did last year. And last year was less than the year before. The first year of the podcast, I was like a maniac out metal detecting every week. And that was also a benefit of the podcast to me. However, in the last 2 years, I've actually halved the amount of detecting each year. So obviously, I want to get back out detecting properly. And every episode almost felt disingenuous because I wasn't getting out detecting as much as I wanted to, or as I used to. So, what's the plan for all the content? I'm going to keep the podcast up. It costs me $20 a month just to keep there, so that's fine. I'll keep that podcast. I'll keep the podcast content up there in the hope that if somebody is starting out in the hobby, that they can discover the podcast, go through the episodes, and take them from beginners to mid-level metal detectorists. And that's the plan. Is there plans in the future? There may be. I have a couple of more ideas. However, I don't want to sort of set an expectation. I'll keep the podcast episodes live. However, from an update perspective, there will be no updates for the foreseeable future. I have a few ideas of where the podcast could go in the future, and I'm going to investigate those ideas over the next couple of months. However, I don't want to be setting an expectation with you guys that I'm going to be coming back in 3 months or whatever. I don't really know. But if I do come back, it will be on a season basis. So it will be over the winter season, say, for example, or my winter season, for example, when I can do the content. Plus I would expect that there will be a lot more stuff to talk about. So it may be that there will be 20 episodes per year. But I won't be releasing content till I have all those 20 episodes done, and I can just release them, take a break for a couple of months, go detecting, gather up more content, film it, record it, edit it, and put it back out again. A body of work. But that's the only way I can see it working in the future. So that's the plan. I do have plans for some YouTube videos that I've already got in the making. So watch this space on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, maybe subscribe on YouTube just to see. But I suppose YouTube doesn't require regular a cadence, so I will be doing those at my leisure, and they'll get up over the next couple of months. Other than that, all that's left to say is thanks to all the patrons and buy me a coffees over the years. Um, you guys have ensured the quality of the podcast. Buying things like this microphone, your money went to buy this microphone, which was about $300, and every penny that was donated to the podcast went back into the podcast. It costs about 60-70 euro to run the podcast every month. So I wasn't running the podcast at a profit, despite what some people may think, especially those people who email looking for free who look for free metal detectors off me. um but yeah, you know, thanks to all the patrons. You've been super supportive, and without you, the podcast wouldn't be at the quality it is right now. And to everybody else in the community, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you all. You have been amazing. I was trying to think of, a lot of people come up and they go, "Oh, it's the negative comments that get me down and all that." I can tell you, hand on heart, I've had two negative comments in the 3.5 years, and that's between YouTube, Twitter, across the board about the podcast. One, I can't even remember what it was the first one, but it threw me for a loop and just goes to show it wasn't important. But the second one was kind of funny. They gave me a 4-star review saying the podcast wasn't long enough, which I thought was amazing. So, but yeah, so the comments from the community has been nothing but supportive. And I am eternally grateful that you have, embraced me and embraced the format and understood what I was going for here. And that's it, guys. All that's left to say is thanks a million. If you've listened to the podcast over the last 147 episodes, there's three things that have always rang true. People equal finds, so always do your research. Be efficient with your time. because the more efficient you are, the more ground you can cover. The more ground you can cover, the more finds you can make. And finally, it doesn't matter what metal detector you have. It's the operator that makes you great. And that's it, guys. Get out there, good luck, and happy hunting.